Kwame Nkrumah, in the year 1963, delivered one of the most inspiring, if not the best speech to have ever been given by any African leader. This was at a Conference for African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Nkrumah insisted that Pan-African unity is the only way that Africa would realize the benefits of its political independence as well as develop economically. Nkrumah laid out benchmarks such as the establishment of one common market on which all African nations would trade amongst themselves, the establishment of one common currency which will be used throughout Africa to trade between African individuals as well as African nations, the establishment of one African central bank which would facilitate trade amongst African nations as well as facilitate trade between Africa and other continents. 58 years later, I stand here to reaffirm that truly and indeed Pan-African unity is the only way that Africa will develop economically and industrialize. I have spent the last 8 years researching and writing about the benefits that would come along with Pan-African unity. In 2014, I authored an article which was published by the Zambia Daily Mail newspaper entitled "Africa Should Trade More with Itself." In this article, I emphasized on the importance for regional bodies such as the Southern African Development Committee, SADC, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, Commonwealth, as well as the African Union itself, to proliferate the importance of intra-trade amongst African nations. According to a report published in 2017 by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, intra-trade amongst African nations is only at 2%. This is compared to 47% amongst the American nations, 61% amongst the Asian nations, and a whopping 67% amongst the European nations. And of course, we have 7% by the Oceania nations. We could tell from these statistics that indeed there is very little trade amongst African nations, and this has led to the lack of industrialization in Africa. I authored another article which was published by the Zambia Daily Mail newspaper in 2019 entitled "Pan-Africanism is the only solution to Africa's economic emancipation." Again, in this article, I emphasized on the need for African nations to increase the levels of intra-trade amongst themselves. But more importantly, I emphasized that Africa would continue to be the net exporter of raw materials to other continents for as long as we do not make the realization of a dream for Pan-African unity a reality. The United States of America, arguably the most powerful economy in the world, got to its position by encouraging trade amongst the American nations. The same story goes for the European nations. I stand here today to challenge the African leaders, the current leaders, as well as the emerging young leaders in Africa to focus on realizing the dream for Pan-African unity. We need to channel our energies to make sure that we realize the Pan-African unity so that we can have one common market on which all nations can trade, one common currency which will be used to facilitate trade, and indeed one African central bank so that all nations can trade successfully and we develop the economy of Africa. Thank you.